Ladies and gentlemen, Pack Daddy Army, welcome back for another team-specific 7-round mock draft. This time it was submitted by Mr. Brandon M. We'll just leave it at that. I don't like doing last names. But he's brand new to the group and already jumped in on the FanSpeak giveaway bandwagon. For those that don't know, let me quickly go over that. I am offering a free FanSpeak premium subscription. And the way that you get into that is very simple. First, subscribe to this channel. Second, follow me on Twitter. You can find that in the description. Third, go over to the Facebook group. Find that in the description. And submit a FanSpeak 7-round mock draft. If you don't know what that is, go to fanspeak.com. Do a 7-round mock draft for your team. You'll figure it out. Very intuitive, but it's a lot of fun. You get to be a GM, make the picks for your team. The computer simulates their own picks. With the premium subscription, which is what I'm giving away free, you can do trades and all those kinds of things, which is very, very awesome. What I need from you is to then submit that in the Facebook group. Say, here are the players I picked. Here's where I picked them. Round 1, pick 14, I picked this player. And here's why. And then just throw in your Twitter handle and your YouTube name so I can verify that you did subscribe to the channel and follow me on Twitter. Every time you submit a mock draft, you are entered into the competition another time, but only once a week. I'm not, I don't want one every day. That's kind of crazy. Obviously, I mean, you could do one every hour if you wanted to. Once a week, you're submitted into the contest. So that's what that is. Let us carry on here. This is, once again, if I haven't mentioned it, the Green Bay Packers. I know I already did that, but the first time I did it, it was me, because that's my team, and I wanted to be able to kind of kick this thing off. And but once again, this time we got Brandon drafting for the Packers. It is a full 7-round mock draft. Here we go. With the 14th pick in the first round of the 2018 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Tavares McFadden, cornerback out of Florida State. So the cornerbacks, there's been a lot of contention about. Some people love Tavares McFadden, some people don't. And I even checked it out on Walter Football because I'm trying to figure out the guy's 40 time, and nobody really has it. He has these kind of generic 40 time estimates, but they're very generic. So I don't know how much stock you put in it. But anyways, the important part is he has him ranked as the 10th best corner in this draft, just to kind of give you a scope of, some people say he's the best. Some are like, we're talking third. I mean, where does he have him going here? 2nd to 4th, so potential 4th round. So anyways, here are the notes from Brandon. He says, adds another king-size type player. Speed and height combo of King and McFadden will be scary. So from that standpoint, that it was his note that made me want to go out and find out what his speed is, because there's absolutely no question that if things pan out, right, it could just be horrible where you have two terrible corners, because McFadden is similar to King in that he's sort of raw, but he has the athletic tools. That's exactly what Kevin King is. So it could go either way. If both of these guys end up being big, strong, fast, physical guys that reach their full potential, unbelievable cornerback duo. But what if they don't? Right? Kevin King didn't have a great first year. If he doesn't make a second-year leap and McFadden is still raw, we don't expect much from him in his first year. We got another bad year of cornerback play. So we're taking a high-risk gamble here, but with a very high ceiling is kind of how I'm seeing that. But Brandon's looking at the potential, and he's saying, man, oh man, we're going to have two Kevin Kings, two guys that are sort of Richard Sherman-ish, tall, long, fast, physical type cornerbacks, and he's salivating about it. With the 14th pick in the second round of the 2018 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Christian Kirk, wide receiver, Texas A&M. I'll get to his note first. Allows Packers to be ready for the departure of either Jordy or Cobb. If Jordy's gone and we have two slot receivers in Cobb and Kirk, then we should draft a taller, more physical wide receiver in another draft. So we had Christian Kirk go, I think 2 mock drafts ago, to the Packers in the second round. I like that. I mean, maybe it's just because he was, anytime you get a guy who's thought of as a baby Odell Beckham, and you pick him up in the second round as your wide receiver, you got to get a little excited about it. But the comment section wasn't too thrilled. It was just kind of a bland, yeah, we don't need a wide receiver. So, but personally, I would like it. I'd be excited. There's a little bit of a question of where do we put him, how do we use him. The thing that kind of scared me is when I watched film of him, the first thing that came to mind was he's sort of like a Tavon Austin type player, very skillful with the ball in his hand and can do a lot of stuff, but it's kind of a, how do we get the ball into his hand kind of a situation, almost like a Trevor Davis, like a better Trevor Davis, where it's, obviously with the ball in his hand, he's a scary guy, but it's just we're having a hard time finding ways to get the ball into his hand. And as he alluded to with Cobb on the field, Cobb is our slot guy. Christian Kirk is a better slot receiver. Not that you can't have two slot receivers on the field if you're going four wide or whatever the situation is, but there's questions there, but I would be excited about it. I like it. I'm sorry. I know a lot of Packer fans are looking at it, shaking their head, saying, no, that's not what we need, but I dig it, man. I like it. With the 14th pick in the third round of the 2018 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Desmond Harrison, offensive tackle, West Georgia. Here are Brandon's notes. Gives the Packers strength and size at right tackle to pair with Bakhtiari. Has some discipline issues and is a risk, but if it works out, he'll be great. He's a boom or bust pick, he says. So, with my little bit of research that I did, it sounds as though he was a Texas tackle and was released because he failed a drug test, and that's where he ended up with West Georgia. But he is, he played for a very big program. He's a 6'7", 300-pound monster. Probably fell largely because of these concerns. So we're talking about a guy that's maybe a first, second round. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's not true. But you have to assume a guy that gets kicked out of a major program and goes to play for West Georgia, who's still projected maybe third round, has got to have some talent there. Tackle, in terms of the position, I don't hate it. I know some people are not a big fan. I think Balaga is a big question mark in terms of his age, in terms of even his talent and his injury history, but at the very least, depth is a concern, as we've learned. Guard and center are much more important, but we'll see where we go with this draft from here. With the 38th pick in the third round of the 2018 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Troy Fumagalli, tight end, Wisconsin. So, first his notes, I suppose. Might be selfish because I'm a Badger fan, but Packers love their tight end position and never know how to utilize them. Hopefully, Fum stops that trend. Balanced with blocking and receiving, he says. So I had the same pick in my Packers 7-round mock draft. I think a lot of Packers fans are kind of that way anytime, like Beagle or Watt or whatever, anytime there's a potential Badger that could come to Green Bay, we tend to love that. There are better tight end prospects, but Fumagalli is a very good tight end. There's no question about that. I think end of the third round, I think I had him with the first pick in the third round. End of the third round would be obviously better because it's later. And it's a huge need for this team. I mean, Richard Rodgers I believe his contract's up. So there's a question, what do we do with him? I'm assuming we're going to bring him back because all we really have behind him is Lance Kendricks. But, man, we got to do something better. We just have to. And I think there's some real good potential here. I don't see going earlier than Fumagalli. In other words, there's more talented tight ends. I can't imagine doing like a first round or even a second round on a tight end. I just feel like that's not the Packers style. I also don't feel like that's maybe the most intelligent thing. But at some point, we really need to invest in it. I know we've gone out in free agency, but even that hasn't really worked out. There are some appealing free agents that are coming out, is my understanding anyways. I've heard some pretty big names. Maybe we could try to get our hands on some of those guys. But something has to be done. And Troy, even though he is a Badger, I do think it makes sense. It's not just a homer pick. With the 14th pick in the fourth round of the 2018 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Marcus Davenport, outside linebacker, UTSA. He is an athletic freak at 6'7" and adds another piece for the defense to rush the quarterback that hopefully the next defensive coordinator, not named Dom Capers, knows how to use. So this was submitted several days ago, but it does seem as though this is pretty official at this point. It's not officially official, but it's probably beyond a pipe dream at this time. Ian Rappaport and the other guy that pretends he's Ian Rappaport, whatever his name is, have both said that it seems pretty official. They're not expecting to have Dom Capers back. So that'll be interesting to see. It kind of makes, as excited as I am as a Packer fan, it makes it a little more complicated from my standpoint. in terms of the draft. I know obviously that's a GM thing more than a defensive coordinator thing, but if we do get a defensive coordinator, what input do they have in terms of scheme, and what are we going to do, and what direction are we going to go? How much input does he have? That maybe changes, because the Packers are a very traditional organization. You kind of, even though their picks are unpredictable, they kind of do the same old stuff over and over again. So you can kind of look at a prospect and go, yeah, that's a Packers guy for sure. But this adds a little bit of a wrench into those plans. But anyways, Marcus Davenport. I'll be honest, it's a guy that I have not heard of, so I decided I would go and watch a little bit of film on Davenport. He's listed at 255, which is not very stout for a 6'7" guy, but it's kind of funny. The one person that came to my mind was Malik McDowell from last year's draft. And I guess what I mean by that is he is very big. He's very hard to block. I mean, you get two blockers on him. He'll find his way through eventually. But in terms of being able to get to the quarterback in any reasonable amount of time, it's not really there. So he's very hard to block. He's a very good edge setter. And his primary goal, and this kind of reminded me of Malik too, was to hurt the guy in front of him. It's getting to the ball carrier is secondary. He's going to hit this guy in front of him as hard as he possibly can and drive him straight back. So I think similar to McDowell, he is a play buster, right? He's the kind of guy where you can't block him. He's just too big and he's too strong. But in terms of being polished, right? I mean, he's a straight bull rusher. Outside of the bull rush, I never saw him do anything. I watched him against I don't know, Texas A&M, and there was somebody else. I don't remember exactly what team. But I watched two of his games, and that was pretty clear. He's a decent edge setter. He's got a bull rush, and maybe if the blocker doesn't really necessarily do his job, or he can get inside of you, he can get to the quarterback, and he did a few times. But he's got to be able to develop a little bit more as a pass rusher. But this late in the game, I mean, you get a guy that's you're not going to get Harold Landry's obviously this late, so there's going to be some issues. But there's no question the potential with a guy like this. Again, 6'7", extremely powerful. He can blow up plays like nothing else. I mean, you try to get combo blocks and start running to the outside, he can just plow right through it. And then you got your linebackers behind you and everything else to kind of play cleanup. So that's kind of where I see him. If you've got quick athletic guys that can play cleanup, just let him be the wrecking ball. With the 14th pick in the 5th round of the 2018 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Cody O'Connell, guard, Washington State. His note, adds depth at position. So he didn't really have a long-winded explanation for that, but I don't even necessarily... Maybe because it's 5th round, we could say it's depth, but considering Jari Evans is kind of getting to the end of his rope, I mean, he's been in the league forever. Lane Taylor, I don't think, is very good, and everybody that's behind them is just very poor quality. I mean, even for backups, they're just not very good. So, even in the 5th round, I'm looking at Cody O'Connell saying he has a legitimate chance of being a starter. And I think for the Packers, you got to draft a guy that you want to be a starter. We're not looking for developmental players at guard. At center, they just signed Corey Linsley, so you have to assume, as much as I was excited about guys like Billy Price, and I really like Frank Ragnow, I still don't know how to say his name. As much as I like those guys, it seems as though they're content with Corey Linsley. And Corey's been great for a while. He just had a really bad year. I don't know what happened. But you got to shore up the guard position. We got a tackle that can play for depth or possibly replace Balaga. But we got two guards that need to be upgraded. So Cody, I'm hoping, is a guy that can come in and play instantly, or at least battle for that job. Or at the very, very least, when one of these guards get hurt, we have a capable football player in some capacity. With the 34th pick in the 5th round, the Green Bay Packers select Christian Lacouture Jr., defensive line, LSU. Probably could have guessed he played for LSU, right? Louisiana, French, you understand. The note is, has improved immensely from junior to senior year as he changed from defensive tackle to defensive end, allows Packers to have another good rusher or run stopper. Not or. So either Brandon is a big LSU fan or he knows his stuff, because some 5th round prospect out of a defensive lineman out of LSU, that's typically not general knowledge for most people, I would think. But Christian is 6'5". He's 300 pounds. Definitely would be a defensive lineman for the Packers, not an end or an outside linebacker or whatever at 300 pounds. And I would say it's still a need for the Packers, even though we have Kenny Clark and Mike Daniels. Two guys does not a defensive line make. And Dean Lowry has had some... sorry, I got a fidget spinner I'm playing with. I need to stop doing that into the microphone. But, Dean Lowry has been impressive at times. But we need to find more guys. Montravius Adams hasn't really shown anything. I think the Packers have the potential to have a very good defensive line. They have the makings of one. There's some pieces there, but they haven't quite got it. I did watch a little bit of film on him against Alabama. This was from 2015, but I got to see him play against Ryan Kelly. He held his own. I mean, he's a big, strong, physical dude. I mean, he occasionally, at double teams, he kind of struggled with, but I think most people do. But one-on-one, he's blowing these guys straight back, and I don't know. I thought he was really fun to watch, especially this late in the draft. I would be fine with this pick. With the 36th pick in the 5th round of the 2018 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Toa Lobendon, center, USC. He says adds more depth again to the position even after the Lindsey extension. The Packers, for quite a while, they had a very good offensive line, and they had some solid backups as well. Guys like J.C. Treader that you're thinking, I don't know if I necessarily want them to be a starter, but they're solid, right? If somebody goes down for a play or for a game, they come in and they hold their own. They're good enough, especially with Rodgers being able to navigate the pocket and make some adjustments with your running game and your quick passes and all that stuff, and they can manage. So to say we just need to build an offensive line, yeah, we do, but that doesn't mean you can't get another center in there. Try to get another J.C. Treader or a guy that can fight for the job. I mean, nobody says that Corey Linsley, just because he got an extension, has to be the guy. That means they want him to be the guy. They want him to stick around. Obviously, they need him. That's another concern. As much as you look at it and go, oh, why did you extend him? He's not even that good. How bad is this offensive line now if we don't have Corey Linsley? Because who's going to play center? So, to one extent, you look at it and go, I was kind of hoping for a better center. That doesn't mean you can't draft a center and have him beat out Corey Linsley for the job. And at the very least, I agree, depth at the position is important. So, again, another good pick there from Brandon. With the 38th pick in the 5th round of the 2018 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Cedric Wilson, wide receiver, Boise State. Here are the notes. Wilson falls to them at round 5, and instead of the Packers waiting to find a replacement for Jordy in another draft, they take him right here. Wilson is 6'3" with length that'll allow him to make great catches. Does that mean the Packers should try to trade Jordy or Cobb for value? And that's, it's kind of one of those off-season things that people talk about that it's kind of like, that's not going to happen. You're kind of getting a little crazy. But it is weird that nobody's really brought it up. At the very least, you let some of these guys go, and these could be one of those kinds of players that factor into the compensatory formula, which is why the Packers have 12 picks this draft, because they let a lot of people walk, and then they get picked up, etc., etc. But trading is another option. These guys still have a lot of value. Personally, I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Packers are going to do everything they can to retain them. It's just a matter of, are you willing to accept the money we're offering you, and it's a yes or no. Jordy, there's also the concern he's going to retire. He's talked about it before. I guess it was a severe struggle when he had that knee injury and he was out for the year. He really contemplated not coming back. So you kind of wonder. A lot of people, when they kind of get that in their head, these guys have been working forever, they say, I'm going to work till I'm dead, and then all of a sudden one day they get this little nugget in their head that says, yeah, but what if I retire? And you just hear them talking about it constantly, like, I might retire, I don't know, I might get, and then they retire. So you got to wonder about that. It's an exciting thing to think about retirement and being able to do what you want. And Jordy's got his whole farm and all that stuff out there, and he's got the family farm, and he's married, and he's got kids, and can spend more time with them. And anyways, as far as the trade is concerned, I would say it's unlikely, but there's no question there's value in these guys. And Aaron Rodgers shoots their value through the roof. Unfortunately, Aaron Rodgers was out this year, so their value tanked because Brett Hundley made them all look like garbage, because he's to the extent that Rodgers is a good quarterback, Hundley is a very bad quarterback. So as good as he makes the wide receivers look, Hundley makes them look terrible. But it's an option. Who knows? I don't know. It's something to talk about. I would say it's extremely unlikely, but yeah, we'll entertain it. It's just fun. That's what we're doing here. We're just having fun, man. That's why I don't understand the negative comments. Just have fun. Play with it a little bit. Maybe it'll happen. Yeah, it's a weird pick. It's not the most obvious thing. I'm not talking about the pick here. I'm elaborating now. But just lighten up. Jeez. With the 14th pick in the 6th round of the 2018 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Jerome Baker, linebacker, Ohio State. Now, he didn't actually pick Jerome Baker, but he picked somebody that's already in the NFL, so that the name doesn't make any sense. But he did say linebacker out of Ohio State, and Jerome Baker is the only one that I can think of that might be available this late in the draft. So we're going to go with Jerome Baker, linebacker out of Ohio State. Otherwise, I'm going to announce a Michigan defensive end that was selected in last year's draft. And I don't want to do that. So his note was add some depth to an already decent linebacking core. I'm not going to go too deep into the guy that he didn't actually pick, but as far as linebacker later in the draft, I think it makes sense. They've gone 2 years in a row drafting linebackers in the 4th round. I think they're pretty good with Jake and Blake, and they do need some more depth. I mean, they've got the safeties kind of filling in, and they have one other linebacker who is an undrafted free agent that's kind of meh. So getting a little bit more depth makes sense, and kind of going a little later than 4th round also makes sense. So I could see 6th round linebacker, I think, makes sense. Whether or not Jerome Baker's around at that point, I don't know. From what I can tell, he's maybe like a 3rd, 4th roundish kind of guy, so probably not, but it is what it is. We'll just say 6th round linebacker kind of makes sense. With the 14th pick in the 7th round of the 2018 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Andre Chachere, cornerback out of San Diego State, and I do think that's how you say his name. I'm not slurring my speech. I have not been drinking anything today. His note on him, adds depth and could replace House if he leaves. You can never really doubt the Packers late with cornerbacks. I mean, it's kind of incredible. They draft cornerbacks in the 1st round, in the 2nd round, and they have a ton of undrafted free agents, and it's kind of even, right? their 1st round draft picks are just about as good as their undrafted free agents. So taking a guy in the 7th round, sure, why not? He'll compete. Of course he will. I did watch a little bit of him. The only real thing that I don't like about him is he's really not a very physical football player, not a very good tackler. He looks, he's pretty quick. He can close quickly, and he throws his body into these tackles, and it looks like it's about to be impressive, but he bounces right off people and doesn't make the tackle. Or, he'll kind of wrap somebody up, and he's kind of doing that dance where he's spinning them like 6 times trying to get him to go down. So he needs to kind of bulk up and man up a little bit, but in the 7th round, a good enough cover corner will be developmental, I guess. Let him hit the weights a little bit. He could be a good cornerback. Finally, with the 18th pick in the 7th round of the 2018 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Timon Paris, guard, Stony Brook. His note on this pick, I know it's boring, but it adds depth again to an offensive line that is struggling to protect Aaron Rodgers, Brett Hundley, or any quarterback in that matter. I don't think it's boring. I'm excited about having a good offensive line again, getting this run game going, protecting the greatest quarterback to ever throw the football. Timon Paris, I did watch a little bit about him. He has him listed here as a guard, but I see him playing tackle. However, with that said, I understand why he's being called a guard and is probably going to enter the draft as a guard, because if you watch him play, he is sort of one of those classic. He is 6'5", which is pretty big for an interior offensive lineman, but 6'5", 320 pounds. You watch him play, he's incredibly thick, very wide, and you watch him during these pass plays, he's not very athletic. He really struggles with his kick step and all that stuff, trying to get out wide to stop these guys from getting around him. But you watch him on the run plays, and he's just an absolute road grader. So you're watching him just thinking, why don't you guys just put him at guard? He should be a guard. So you get him in smaller spaces as a guard. You let him just kind of operate as sort of a road grader and work in smaller spaces. And having that, at least the athletic ability to have played at tackle in his college career is going to be good as well, because you got to be somewhat athletic as a guard. So I think that'll work to his advantage. I could see him being a pretty decent guard and also being able to come in and compete for these wide open guard positions for the Packers. So here are his final thoughts on this mock draft. He says, the more I drafted, the more I realized how good the Packers could have it in the draft. They have the opportunity to trade up in the draft to get valuable players as they have 12 picks, which is unnecessary. Absolutely true. Adding McFadden will solidify a young and growing secondary. Also, adding 2 wide receivers in Kirk and Wilson will allow the Packers to move on from Nelson and or Cobb, which will create cap space and let Devontae Adams be the man in the receiving core. As a Packers fan, I know they did bad this year, but this might be a diamond in the rough as well as it will get rid of Capers and others in the office and allow us to get great value in the draft. And I think that's true. 12 picks, it's kind of exciting, but you don't get extra spots in your roster because you have a lot of picks. So 12 picks, if you use all of them as picks, just means you're cutting more guys. Now the benefit of it is you're taking more swings, so you have a better chance of hitting on one of these, freakish guys that ends up getting drafted in the 5th or 6th round. That ends up, like a Tyreek Hill or whatever, that everybody passed on him and, whatever. But I tend to agree with what he's saying, especially, you think about the first round, the Packers are going to be drafting earlier than usual. If they're drafting at, say, 12 or whatever it might be when this thing's said and done, if imagine at 9 or 10 if a guy like Quentin Nelson or some other prospect that they really like is available, they have the draft capital to be able to package up a couple of these picks that they don't necessarily need and move up a little bit, which is something the Packers aren't really accustomed to doing. They're trading back a lot, but with all these picks, they have the ability to move up, grab some really solid players, and even, second and third round, there's some really severe talent. You look at Christian Kirk, and what if he's available a couple of picks before the Packers are up? They might be able to move up and get him. So, for the first time, this wasn't a great regular season, but this will be an exciting draft for Packers fans, which is very rare. Usually we get about 8 picks, and they're all at the end of the round. There's, traditional 7 with like 1 or 2 compensatory picks, and that's about that. But this is going to be a lot of fun for Packers fans. This is going to be a good one, and for a guy like me who loves the draft and loves the Packers, and if you are a big Packer fan and a big draft fan, This is our Super Bowl this year. I'm sorry to tell you. I know it's technically next year, but this is our big Super Bowl coming up. It's going to be real exciting. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's a lot of talent. So with that, I think Brandon did a pretty good job. I think he hit on a lot of our big needs. It gives us a lot of promise. And again, if he had the premium subscription, as I will be giving away, that hopefully for his sake he wins, with that FanSpeak premium subscription, you can package up these, and I'll probably do that. I'll do another Packers one, and I'll try to package up some of these guys and see what kind of players we can end up with. It's a lot of fun. Also, be sure to get in the Facebook group. We do mock drafts in the group where you get to be a GM and sort of compete, I guess, but work with other guys in the group just to kind of represent your team. It's a lot of fun. Be sure to get in the Facebook group. Otherwise, guys, I will see you next time. Take care.